One of the biggest differences I find now between first-time founders and second-time founders is that distribution. So, first-time founders, they might focus on, just building the product, building the MVP. But the second-time founders, they're really forward-thinking and really focus on the distribution.
Welcome to Yarrow's podcast, where you'll discover the stories behind world-class performers, business builders, and enlightened leaders.
Hey, this is Yarrow, and thanks for downloading my podcast today. You're about to hear from Brendan Hill, who is an entrepreneur and angel investor from Australia. In this interview, Brendan shares his experience first as an entrepreneur starting an e-commerce website all about football, soccer, memorabilia, in particular shirts signed by players from Europe, which he then brought back to Australia and sold. It's a good story. It's a classic e-commerce story, which eventually led to him selling the business, which was how he funded his now current pastime, angel investing. So he used the money from selling his business to switch basically to become an investor, and has now done over 20 investments, both through syndicates. He's leading his own syndicate, which is brand new. So he talks about what it's like to be a syndicate lead on AngelList. You may have heard of that website for angel investing, but also some of the direct investments he's done in various different startups, including one called Tiliter, which is a AI-powered product identification scanning tool, which helps identify things like fruit, which doesn't have a barcode, and is going really, really well down in Australia and expanding around the world. He's an investor in that. He syndicated that deal to AngelList, and that's actually where I got involved. I dropped a little bit of money as a syndicate member into that deal as well. So you hear us talk about that. So if you're interested in entrepreneurship in terms of e-commerce and selling an e-commerce business, but more importantly, angel investing, syndicates, and everything to do with that side of entrepreneurship, you'll enjoy this podcast. So here we go. Here's Brendan Hill. Hi, this is Yarrow. Thanks for joining me today. I'd like to welcome Brendan Hill to the podcast. Brendan, thanks for joining me.
Thank you, Yarrow. Looking forward to it.
So Brendan and I recently connected through a Slack group, actually. Jason Kalkanis, who is an angel investor, and he has a huge startup Slack group for his This Week in Startups podcast. We'll have to include that with the show notes as well. But basically, Brendan and I are both members there. It's free. And I don't know, did we connect about talking about Palantir? Was that the first point of contact?
I believe so, Yarrow. Yeah. I invested in some Palantir secondary stock a couple of years ago. And as you mentioned, Jason Kalakanis' Slack community is a fantastic place to meet like-minded entrepreneurs and investors. So I think I just reached out to you. I saw one of your posts saying that you also had some Palantir secondary stock, and we took it from there.
Yeah, that's awesome. Now, that led to me learning a bit more about you. And in fact, you got me in as an angel investor in your angel, what is it? I don't pronounce this right. Tiliter is the name of the company that you recently did a seed round you were part of. But I'd love to talk about all of that. But first, we should probably introduce you a bit more so the audience knows why we're talking to you. I wanted to get Brendan on because he has currently doing a lot of angel investing, which is something I'm very interested in and have been doing myself for a few years now. But also the background story of Brendan, I believe there's a pretty awesome e-commerce story to share here. So I want to kind of look at both worlds. But Brendan, maybe you want to give us a highlight reel. Just what are your claims to fame?
Yeah, definitely, Yarrow. Thanks for the opportunity again. So, I've had an interesting journey over the last 15 years. So I guess I've sort of come full circle now. So I was a founder myself of a business. And now, as Yarrow mentioned, I love to angel invest in early stage startups. So, I started, tinkering, building e-commerce websites during high school and university. Back in those days, there was no Shopify, there was no WooCommerce. It was a lot harder. But, I found some profitable niches. In those days, there was a lot of fantastic resources. I was an early listener of Yarrow's blog, of your blog, people like Neil Patel as well. There was a lot of great resources where you could learn online marketing and create a profitable business. So I found a profitable niche in the area of sports memorabilia. So I was a big football or soccer fan, the World Game. And I had a big collection myself of, different signed jerseys. I was a big Tottenham Hotspur fan and still am. in the Premier League. So what I did, I flew over to the UK. I went to Spain. I went to Italy. I met all the different suppliers that obtained these autographed jerseys. And then after I had built that supply chain, came back to Australia and basically had the signed jerseys delivered to myself here in Sydney. I used a lot of the marketing knowledge that I'd acquired. Created a real premium product. It was more like an experience as well. So I mean, if you're buying a signed jersey, you're buying memories. You're buying memories of your favorite football teams, maybe your favorite match. Your team may have won a trophy, and you want to remember that. So how do you do that? You buy a signed jersey. So really creating an experience, built a community. Something that I learned from you in the early days as well. The power of community, and ran this business. It was very profitable. Ran it for 5 or 6 years. Could have been comfortable, and I love football. I loved traveling. It's a pretty good gig. Going over, watching the Premier League multiple times and different football leagues around the world. But I'd always been interested in startups. Always been interested, in expanding my entrepreneurial journey as well. So, the time came. I started to seek a buyer for the business. And, I actually found someone right here in Australia. I'd been talking to people in the US and Singapore. It worked out perfectly, smooth transition. I had to stay on for about 6 months to handle the transition and hand over the technology that we'd built. And after I exited the business, I was in a great position to use those acquisition funds to, start investing in these early stage technology companies that, these guys are trying to change the world. It's a super exciting space to be in as well, working with founders. And it's kind of like getting in, I'm not sure if you're familiar with Back to the Future, but getting in Doc Emmett's, getting in the DeLorean, you're going 5 to 10 years into the future. These founders have the vision of, they're building the world that they want to see. And, it's super stimulating. I get a surface area education in a lot of different areas, AI, machine learning. I'm learning a bit about space as well, which is super interesting. So, to work with different people each day is super interesting. And, I'm trying to build out the Australian investor ecosystem as well.
Oh, I want to unpack a few things here. Let's start with the e-commerce business, and we can switch to angel investing mode after that. I know nothing about the memorabilia space besides the fact that it exists. I'm curious, even when you said you went over to Europe, is that was the plan, you hope to pick up something at X dollars and then you believe that you could sell it for more simply because you'll reach a different audience in Australia, right at the early stages of that company?
Yeah, that's exactly right. So, in the early days, I didn't really drill down on my niche very early. I was offering all different types of sports. So, I had cricket, I had rugby union, I had the local Australian sports as well. But, Australian customers had access to all these sports. You can go down to your local club, you can go down after the game and get the autographs. So what I was selling was, something that money can't buy in Australia. European signed jerseys, footballs, and football boots. So, it's hard for Australians to fly over to Europe. It's a very expensive and long trip. And, what I found was, people are willing to pay, multiples on top of the cost price to, acquire their hero's jersey as well. And, the Premier League was really taking off in Australia in the mid-2000s. We had access through, different cable providers to live games. The profile of all the Europeans was really growing exponentially. So it was a great combination of factors that really created this profitable business.
Did you just know what was a good deal? I can imagine myself, I'm landing in England and I'm thinking, okay, I'm going to go to the local memorabilia store. I'm going to see a jersey for sale for a football club. And then it's listed at whatever, £100. I know that I can get 300 Aussie dollars when I go home. Is that summarizes your kind of basic plan? You must have some insight, I'm guessing, just because of your knowledge of football, that you can spot a good deal. Is that right?
Yeah, I mean, being an avid football fan and follower as well, I was kept up with the most popular players. I guess I had free market research talking to all my football friends as well to see who what the most popular products would be. But I guess, I started this business in a time, before the lean startup and all the lean methodology was really published. But I used some of those methodologies unknowingly at the time. I had kind of, I guess you could call a minimum viable product. I set up an eBay store first, for example. I gauged the demand for different products, met different suppliers. And then when I really wanted to scale the business, that's when I had to, take that trip over to Europe and, discuss the deals with the different suppliers in the different countries. And once I had, I was pretty lucky. I found some fantastic suppliers pretty early on. But I mean, one of the reasons I sold the business as well is that, it's not a truly scalable business. There's a finite amount of products. The players only sign a certain amount of jerseys. Liverpool, for example, won the Champions League in 2005. After that team, for example, signs 100 jerseys, there's no more left. So, it's very manual in a way. You have to keep uploading, different products to your e-commerce sites. So, I mean, scalability was definitely one of the important things that I learned running that business. And, that's one of the things that I look for now in the startups that I invest in.
You jumped ahead to the next question. I was going to ask you about scaling. I can imagine, I had no idea, 100 signatures only. That's serious demand, though, I could imagine. That's a, very little supply, so everyone's going to want one. Can you just maybe break down a little bit, because you said you had these connections in Europe. Now that's going to send you a amount of product. I'm getting the picture. It's not a lot, so you can't scale too much, but you can certainly get larger than just an eBay store where maybe you're selling one item a week or something like that. How did it scale? Like, did you go from one item a week to 10 items a week to 100 items a week? And is it just you sitting there, coordinating a supplier, sending a jersey direct to a customer, or are they sending you a box full of jerseys? It's landing in your Sydney garage, and then you're packaging up each individual product as it sells and sending it down, through the post office. Is that kind of the visual we've got of the early days of your company?
That's pretty much spot on, Yarrow. And, it was very manual in the early days. I did have different freelancers and employees at different times when, different peaks. World Cup, for example, is obviously a very busy time, but that's only once every 4 years. So you really have to double down and make those, golden windows really worth it in the end. I learned many lessons as well. One of the biggest differences I find now between first-time founders and second-time founders is that distribution. So, first-time founders, they might focus on, just building the product, building an MVP. But the second-time founders, they're really forward-thinking and really focus on the distribution. So some other sort of distribution hacks that I had, I sold into physical stores here in Australia as well. We had different affiliates through affiliate marketing. We had different online stores on, eBay and Gumtree. But I mean, the main traffic was coming through the website. We had a pretty extensive content marketing strategy. Learned that from people like yourself and Neil Patel as well. So, our number one acquisition channel was, organic search, which at the end of the day, in my experience, is definitely the most profitable for that long-term ROI horizon.
So someone would literally type in footballer name, signed jersey, and your site would show up.
Yeah, we had a backlink strategy. We were one of the first to really utilize product videos as well. So we had a custom product video. We had a version hosted on YouTube. We had a version hosted on Wistia that was embedded on our site that we found the SEO was a bit stronger using that method as well. We eventually migrated to WooCommerce for our e-commerce store with a lot of customization. And, it was just a fantastic platform for ranking really high organically in Google.
So take us forward with that business. Obviously, you did eventually sell. At what point during this process were you making that choice? And then did you set up the business or like make some changes so it was more attractive to a buyer?
Yeah, so actually read a book, and the name's escaping me at the moment. I think it may be called Built to Sell, and it's only a short book. It's only about 4 hours on Audible, but that's a fantastic book to help you get your business ready for a sale.
It's about a logo design company, isn't it?
Yeah, that's right. So he tells the story through a parable of sorts. It's a bit of a narrative, and it's so many fantastic insights that I got through that story. And one of the main things was, are you your business? No one's going to buy your business if it can't run without you. And I have a lot of friends in Australia that run their own marketing agencies, and it's a big problem that they have as well. They are their business. I think Neil Patel wrote an article recently where he said, one of his biggest mistakes was calling his marketing agency, Neil Patel Marketing. It's going to be hard to sell. He's the face of it. So there's definitely some disadvantages in that way. But I mean, another tactic that I used when I, tried to get my business acquired and eventually did was, actually implementing all of the digital marketing, strategies and techniques to the sale of my business. So, high converting copywriting, using fantastic images, using video as well. So, I mean, I can't stress how important video has been in my entrepreneurial journey as well.
So at the point you're thinking about selling, did you have a price in mind? And I'm totally up to you how much numbers you want to share, but I'd love to know where you were with, the size of the company at that point, what you expected to hopefully get in terms of a sale price. I've sold a few website businesses myself, and I know it's kind of dependent on who you're selling to. But, you sold it in Australia, so you must have found a local buyer. Can you take us through that sales process?
Yeah, definitely. So, I got the business ready to sell. It took me probably about 3 to 6 months, had all the technology up to date. And going back to the Built to Sell book, they have different formulas in there about, how much your business valuation is. So from memory, I think e-commerce business, it's about a 2 to 3x multiple of last year's net revenue. So, I mean, we were a very profitable company at the time. We were set up well for a sale. We were in the sort of mid 6-figure range. And we had a lot of people want to, as start their own online business. And, sometimes a good head start is to acquire an already profitable business. Like we had a large email database, we had a big community. And so the company that actually ended up purchasing us was a marketing company, and they actually brought Uber into Australia back in 2015, 2016. So the three founders, they were football fans as well, which definitely helped. But they're also, interested in the technology that we had built as well, the sort of platform. And, they wanted to bring their sort of business online more as well. So, there's lots of synergies between us. And, I'm just so thankful that, I got to sell to a local company that made the whole, the legals and the accounting a lot cheaper. We had a lot of stock on hand as well. So, I just drove that from Sydney to Brisbane.
Oh, really?
And it was a lot easier than, I was talking to some potential buyers in, the US, Singapore, and a few other places as well. So to find someone in Australia, it was a true blessing.
Is it still up and running?
It is still up and running. The group that bought it from me actually flipped it and sold it a couple of years later to someone I was actually talking to the first time as well. So unfortunately for that buyer, they paid even more than I sold it for. But yeah, from what I know, it is still going well. And, the thing about football is it's always going to be popular. The product is always going to be in demand. And because we had, the strong SEO, we have a strong supply chain, a strong customer base, it's definitely a fantastic foundation for someone to bring new ideas to and continue to grow.
What's the domain name? I haven't asked you that, Brendan. Everyone wants to check it out.
Yeah. So the domain name is premiersportsmemorabilia.com.
Okay. Opening it up now so I can check it out. So you make the sale. Now, I'm guessing if you're talking about a 2 to 3 multiple and you said mid 6 figures, you're making I'd say a good chunk of money. It's not retire forever money, but it's going to keep you going for a long time if you don't do anything else. No matter what, though, you certainly faced a moment in your life where you had options. So take me through your decision-making process for the what's next once the sale was completely finished and you were a free man from that business.
Yeah, so I mean, once I had money, I had a lot of options. Yarrow, it's not going to keep me going for too long with the house prices in Sydney. Let me tell you.
True. That's true. It's probably like one house at the moment, isn't it?
Yeah. Very pricey here in Sydney, Australia. But, I had options and, I really sort of reached out to my mentors as well. And I really wanted to, I guess, highlight the importance of having mentors in, each area of your life as well. So, I asked all the people that I respect the most, and I basically went away for about 6 to 12 months just to study the areas that I was passionate about. I studied entrepreneurship. I reflected on the lessons that I learned from, running an online business for 7 years. And, what I came away with is, I wanted to work with, passionate founders that are changing the world. And, one way to do this is to start another business. And I mean, I could have done that, learned a lot of fantastic lessons and, second-time founders. That's why I like backing second-time founders as an investor now, because, they don't make those same mistakes that they make the first time. So, I mean, I went and I was actually inspired by Tim Ferriss as well. So he has a case study that he talks about a lot. He calls it his 2-year investing MBA. So he was looking at doing an MBA at Stanford, and instead of that, he decided to start angel investing and learning from the actual founders. So he did that after selling his e-commerce startup as well. So
a lot of parallels here.
Yeah, a lot of parallels.
Probably a similar age too, I think, at the time, I would say.
Yeah, so early 30s. So, definitely inspired by that story. So, I had a lot of friends in the startup scene in Australia, and, I'd been interested in the startup space in Australia since, 2012 and 2013. And in the last 7 years, it's gone through a seismic shift as well. So I remember going to one of my first entrepreneurial talks, and it was actually Melanie Perkins, the Canva co-founder.
Nice.
And they had just launched, they had spent 1 year, I believe it was, building out their product. So another lesson as well, there's no one way to build a successful startup. So this was at the time when the lean startup had just come out, everyone was, failing fast and, getting the product out there, rapid iteration on the product from customer feedback. But, Canva sort of went a different route. They went behind closed doors. They built out their technology for a whole year. They had investors sort of pestering them to, at least release something. Yeah, get something out into the market. But, they kind of viewed it as they had one chance to get it right. They wanted to make their product beautiful. They had a big mission as well, democratizing design. And, we all know how that turned out. Now they're valued at $6.2 billion. And, they've done a lot for the Australian startup ecosystem as well.
It's funny you mentioned that time in Canva's life, because I was in Sydney. I think it would have been maybe 7 years ago. And I remember it wasn't Melanie herself, but it was someone, because it was a small team back then. It was someone there invited me to, I'm not sure it was a tour of the office. I think it was simply because, I have a blog and they were looking to do outreach and start getting some links back and some exposure for what they were doing. So maybe they were hoping I would review their platform. I remember thinking now in the history, if I had gone, and I don't know if there was like a seed round coming up or something like that, but the opportunity to invest, unfortunately, not only did I not even go and visit them, I left Australia completely, literally months later. So missed that boat. But I remember when Canva started succeeding, for me, it was like, and this is, I think, a great segue into your own investment philosophy. If I had gone into Canva's offices at the time, I'm pretty sure, and, maybe I'll be wrong because the people might have impressed me, but I'm pretty sure just looking at the idea alone, I would have never foreseen it becoming as successful as it has, because it was essentially just another image editing tool, of which there were already many, nothing to show it would take off the way it has. Did you have any kind of, like, when you first heard about Canva, and even with your investment philosophy now, I like this idea of investing in second-time founders. That's smart. But in terms of product and things like that, do you have any strategies?
Yeah, definitely. And I can go back to the Canva example as well. So what I like to look for in the founders that I invest in, it's that sense of the inevitability of success. And, that's what Melanie had when I heard her talk in, 2013. They had a small team, as you mentioned, based in Surrey Hills. The first 40 or 50 pitches that she gave, all the investors said no. But, she was talking on stage and, talking about getting to, I'm going to roll out this feature when we get to 1 million users. We're going to democratize design. We're going to take on Adobe, Microsoft, all these massive players. And this is a small startup in Sydney. So, she's talking with that much gravitas that, you just want to get involved. And, this happened with one of my recent investments as well. A gentleman by the name of Tarek, and he's started a startup called check.com.au. It's spelled CHEQ, and he's disrupting the same-day pay lending space. Mm-hmm. So he's offering 5% a flat fee, no admin fees, no late fees, and he's really helping people get on top of financial emergencies. So I met him in a first meeting, was in a co-working space in Sydney. He came up with his tracksuit pants on. Probably you don't usually get that when you're meeting an investor that wants to invest in your company. But he's
confidence or lazy.
Yeah. But similar to Melanie as well. So much confidence. He's talking about rolling out feature X, Y, and Z when we get to 250,000 users. And it's just him and his co-founder coding this in a co-working space in Sydney.
Wow.
But, another thing I look for is entrepreneurs that say, that do what they say they're going to do. And Tarek, over the last year has done this as well. Now he's got over 10,000 users on his platform. He's built a community. They're super sticky as well. They keep coming back. He's changing consumer behavior. And he's really, helping people put food on the table. So he's changed. It's kind of like Afterpay as well. It's a really successful startup that we have in Sydney. So they're a buy now, pay later model. And with Tarek, with Check, it's a before pay, sometimes he calls it. So, unlocking access to the wages you've already earned. You might get paid once a month. If you have some kind of emergency, if your car breaks down, now you can access your paycheck in advance and only pay that 5% fee.
Sounds like an interesting investment. I'm curious to hear more about it, but I'd love to also take a step back maybe to the start of this investment journey on your end, because obviously, once you write some checks, you speak to founders, it becomes something you're comfortable with. But take us to that first experience, I guess, where I'm guessing you were back from that education time and you decided you're going to do an investment MBA like Tim Ferriss did. I'm assuming your strategy was Australia, because you do keep talking about the Australian scene and you want to be there and supporting Australian companies. You go and see Melanie talk. Was that part of a strategy of establishing deal flow just simply by attending events? Like, what was your plan at that point?
Yeah, that's 100% right, Yarrow. So, we call it deal flow in the investment world. So you always need to be building out the deal flow. And, deal flow can come from a variety of places. It can come from, events like that. In COVID times, our deal flow is getting a lot more global as well. TechCrunch Disrupt, for example, is happening right now in September. I'm meeting a lot of fantastic people virtually on their platform. It's about meeting founders as well. Participating in online groups. It's really getting your name out there as well. So, actually, one of the quotes that Tarek from Czech says, it's not about, who you know. It's about who knows you. So, there's a lot of personal branding you can do to get your name out there as well. But, one of the best things is having positive word of mouth with founders. So I always try and help my different founders in my portfolio companies as much as I can, with my marketing background, with the large network that I've built in Australia. I kind of almost try and be like a super router of sorts. So I connect them with my network. And, one of the problems that we have in Australia compared to the United States is that really early stage capital problem. So it's hard for these fast growing Australian companies to get the capital that they need to really kickstart their companies. And it's based around a variety of reasons. We're a lot more risk averse in Australia than our US counterparts. Some cultural sort of reasons for that. And, we haven't had the Googles, the Facebooks, the Ubers. There's not really that history of big startup and exiting success like they do in the US. But, companies like Canva and Atlassian are definitely changing that as well. But, what I'm trying to do now, and I'm actually working with the University of New South Wales, the UNSW Founders Program. We're actually running a course and we're educating, everyday investors on how to become angel investors. So last year we ran a 3-day course. We had 17 different angel investors come in and, share their experiences. And, our goal is to get, more people in that early stage funding ecosystem to help out these founders that, they may need, $250,000. It could be the next Canva, to get their product off the ground. Because back in 2013, 2012, when Canva was starting out, Melanie Perkins had to fly over to San Francisco. She stayed on her brother's couch and, she was pitching angel investors over in the US. And I've had a similar experience recently. I helped a startup join some syndicates and syndicate an allocation of their Series A. And we did one syndicate in Australia and we did the other syndicate in the US. And the questions from the investors from the Australian side, it was all about money, how much runway do you have? What's your burn rate? What's your revenue? Then on the US side, there was literally not one question about any monetary concerns. The US questions are all about, how big can your product get? What's your team like? And, how fast can you grow? So you can still see in 2020, the mindset between the two countries and their investment philosophies are definitely still a lot different. But, that will definitely change over time. And especially coming out of COVID as well, we need to back these new companies because they're going to be the people that, create jobs and help us get out of this recession that we're currently in.
You haven't dropped your first investment story yet, Brendan. What was it?
Well, the first investment story was actually through an old friend. So it's definitely important to build out that network and keep in contact and continue to drop value to as many people as you can. So this was a superannuation company. So it's like a 401k in the US, and they were called Grow Super. So they were helping millennials get on top of their retirement savings and plans. And they did this through an app interface. They combined, if you had multiple super funds, they combined that. They made topping up your super fund. They sort of gamified that and made that easy as well. And, these guys are super successful, which was, I was pretty thankful for my first investment because, I didn't really have enough education as I probably should have. And that's a common mistake when you start angel investing. You're so excited, you just want to make that first investment. And, I would definitely recommend to do, a lot of reading. Jason Calacanis has a fantastic book called Angel, and he's one of the most successful angel investors of all time. He was one of the first money in Uber. He had $25,000 check in Uber and he had a 4,000% return, which is not bad. But, there's all kinds of things that you need to look out for in your first investment. Are you investing too much?
That's actually a question I wanted to ask you about money. Sorry to interrupt, because if we can go back to Tim Ferriss's story with his first angel investments. I think he had like planned to invest something like $100 or maybe $200,000, and he basically blew $50,000 on a couple investments that went nowhere straight away, like right out of the gate. It sounds like your early stage. Were you thinking, yeah, I'll drop 25,000, 50,000 on X number of companies? Like, what's your monetary plan? Like, how much do you decide to put into a company?
Yeah, so that is correct with the Tim Ferriss example. He did lose 50,000, 25% of his allocated capital on his first investment. So, I mean, that's why people like Jason Calacanis, they recommend if you are, for example, investing 200,000, have 20 equal bets of 10,000. Because then you also need to keep in mind, you need to save some money for those follow-on rounds as well. So you need to keep backing your winners that are actually getting product market fit. They're getting customers. They're scaling their companies because, you're going to get an outsized return from, one or two of your winners of your whole portfolio. So, I was thinking around the same lines, and it comes to an interesting point as well, Yarrow, around, direct investing and investing in a syndicate.
Let's explain what that difference is for those who don't know.
Yeah, so if you invest directly with a company, they're usually going to ask for a minimum of $25,000 to $50,000. Whereas a syndicate, on the other hand, that's where you gather, it could be a large bunch of angel investors, and they go into a special fund and they have one lead of the syndicate. And it's a fantastic way to democratize angel investing at low amount. So you can, on AngelList, for example, where I have a syndicate as well, you can invest as little as $1,000 into a deal. So you might have, 100 different people that invest $1,000 each, for example, and that syndicate will raise $100,000. The only downside of the syndicate approach is that you have to pay the syndicate lead a 20% carry, and that stands for carried interest. And you're basically paying that 20% carry, to get access to the deal, because these are usually really hard deals to get access to. The founders don't want to talk to 100 individual people as well. And the syndicate lead is also doing the due diligence as well. So, I mean, syndicates are a great way to get into, deals all around the world. I've invested in deals from Colombia, Mexico, the US. And, even if I was in the United States and I wanted to invest in a startup, they'd ask for 100,000 US minimum. And, the legal setup and structure would be very costly for me being an Australian citizen as well. So that's why I'm a big fan of the syndicate approach.
I'd love to actually pick your brain about the behind the scenes of your own syndicate. Obviously, correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm assuming your story would have gone where you did a few direct investments, like you said, 25,000 to 50,000 into companies in Australia. But at some point you said, now I want to lead my own syndicate. So I'm going to go to angellist.co, so the most popular kind of global platform for angel investing, but more importantly for leading a syndicate. Can you tell me a little bit about what happens behind the scenes? And let's make it practical, because I'm an angel in your syndicate now. I was one of X number of people who put a couple of $1,000s into Tiliter. Maybe you could explain how that deal came to be and how it all works behind the scenes. As much as you can reveal, of course. I know some of it's can't be revealed in public.
Yeah, definitely. So, I mean, AngelList is a fantastic platform. It was founded by Naval Ravikant, and I definitely recommend checking out some of his writings and podcasts as well. Definitely one of the most knowledgeable people I've come across. And it's a fantastic way to get into angel investing, as you said, Yarrow. So syndicate leads, they bring startup deals. So startups might be raising a seed round, a Series A round, and the syndicate lead secures an allocation in these rounds. And these usually startups that they're really close to, that they have a relationship with, and they have to have previously invested in the company as well. So then you write the deal note, you get the deal on AngelList. And AngelList has, it's the biggest community of angel investors in the world. So they have, fantastic reach. And they advertise the deal on their platform, and then you can invite different investors as well. And something that's popular on AngelList at the moment it's called co-syndication. So for myself, I did my first syndicate and Yarrow, thank you for backing it. It's one of the reasons we connected. And I did that about 2 months ago. And because I'm a new syndicate on the platform, I actually co-syndicated the deal with a more established AngelList syndicate lead. And I mean, it's similar to, how you grow a podcast and a YouTube channel as well. You collaborate with more established people in the base, and then you show them that you also can provide good value, and then you acquire their members as well. So we had a small allocation of Tiliter's Series A, and a bit of backstory on Tiliter. They're the world's most flexible identification system for products without barcodes. So it's a fantastic team that I met in Sydney, and 3 of the best founders that I've met for sure. And they've created a AI algorithm that can identify any product without a barcode. So the first vertical that they went after with this technology was fresh fruit and produce. So they're actually in Australia's largest supermarket chain, Woolworths, at the moment. They have an autonomous checkout. So you can put your different variety of red apple under their scanner, and it uses computer vision and AI to automatically identify what type of apple it is, what weight, and then you can actually get your mobile phone out, scan the barcode, and you can walk right out of the store. So you have your credit card preloaded on the app. And this is a fantastic contactless shopping method during COVID, and it's proving really successful at the moment.
So is this a case where you get to know the founders, for example, Tiliter in this case, just through your usual connecting with people, and then you talk to them, you find out they're doing a raise, in this case a Series A, and then you just say, hey, can I get a proportion allocation of that, and I'm going to syndicate it to my followers and raise whatever I can raise. Is that kind of how it works, roughly speaking?
Yeah, I mean, roughly speaking, that's accurate. I mean, you never want to, I guess, approach a startup and try and get an allocation, if you can't fill that allocation as well. Because, with a startup, they need to move fast. They're always trying to extend their runway as well and grow as fast as possible. So you really need to commit to a number that you think you can achieve. And I think the thing about angel investing, and after you've been doing it for a couple of years, you really get to read people, as people, as founders. That's one of the skills of angel investing. You need to be able to tell what type of people are going to be successful in building the next great company. Because in the early days, there's not that much information there. It's not like investing in public stock market. We can't look through their revenue reports. We can't look through the historical reports. There's a lot more things that are wrong than are right. So you really need to focus on the things that are right. And, you need to ask yourself, if these couple of things do go right, how big can this idea get? And that's definitely something with Tiliter as well. They're in supermarkets, which are traditionally very hard to get into. They only have innovation cycles every sort of 5 to 7 years. So for Tiliter to have 16 customers around the world, some of the biggest supermarkets like Woolworths, Lidl, Netto in Europe, these guys have over 4,000 stores. To be able to penetrate that, that the product is, definitely one of a kind. And, the technology is fantastic. So, I got to know the founders over about a year, and I got to, it's not easy getting an allocation from such a hot up and coming company as well. So I had to show a lot of value, I helped them in a lot of different areas. And, I was lucky enough to get a small allocation of their Series A. And they wanted, some more exposure to the US investor market as well. So that's one thing that AngelList is fantastic for. It has a lot of US investors, and we actually listed the deal on AngelList, and AngelList have their own internal fund. So this fund looks at every deal before it goes live, and we were lucky enough to get a large investment from them as well, which was a great signal. And it was a really successful syndicate. And now, I'm trying to replicate this with other companies in Australia that want to scale to the US, that want to get that exposure. And it's fantastic for getting those early stage investors in Australia into these great deals as well. It's kind of a circular economy of sorts where everyone wins.
So how many deals have you done at the moment, or investments?
So I've done personally 22 angel investments in Australia, US, Mexico, and Colombia. And I mean, across all different areas as well, computer vision, payments, space, the final frontier. As I said earlier in the interview as well, it's a fantastic way to get, that surface level education across so many different areas. And, it's exciting. Each morning I wake up excited about, what am I going to learn today? What deal am I going to see today? And, being part of AngelList as well, you get to see deals from all across the world. The latest Y Combinator demo day just happened. So Y Combinator or YC, it's the largest accelerator in the world. Companies like Airbnb and Dropbox have come out of there in the early days. They have 150 companies in their cohort now, twice a year. So you can imagine how many quality founders and companies are coming through, daily on AngelList. So it's a super exciting space.
Yeah, I agree. I did a investment in space as well in a satellite company called Akesh through Arlen Hamilton syndicate. And I was learning about satellites for the first time ever and different types of space in terms of, near Earth objects, middle and distant. And it makes you more interested as an investor too, because normally I'd be interested in space, but now I'm like, okay, how is this company different and special? And you're getting your own education, but you're also, as an entrepreneur, excited about the potential. I know, Brendan, there's only a few more minutes before you got to wrap up for another meeting. I'd love to know, obviously, you've kind of had both sides of this experience. You've been an e-commerce entrepreneur. You've had a successful exit. You've turned that money now, or some of it anyway, into various or over 20 angel investments. It's early enough days that you can't say that, you've got an Uber in there yet, I'm assuming, but that's the ultimate plan, isn't it? That we're going to hit something of that level. But maybe you've got some other goals as well. Like, what are your personal goals around angel investing? Besides, and I know you can answer in one way, you like helping other entrepreneurs. Let's put that answer aside, because I know that's the case for you. But what are your other goals?
Yeah, I mean, I definitely want to get more people into the area of angel investing. So as I mentioned, we ran a course last year. There were all kinds of people that came to that course. We had ex-founders, we had, investment bankers, we had, all kinds of different people. And I mean, angel investing is such an interesting and young asset class. And there's a lot of barriers that are getting knocked down. So the access is getting easier. It's a great way to get an education and learn about the ecosystem. I think it's great for founders as well. Like, even if you're not interested in angel investing, I think it's a great way to, get inside the mind of investors and, see how they think. Not every angel investor is looking for the next Uber. They might have different goals and aspirations. They might be a social impact investor, for example. So I mean, Jason Calacanis' book, again, Angel, that's got some great chapters that I recommend every founder that I coach and mentor read as well, just to get inside the mindset of the investor. And, how do you make your company more investable? Because, the whole fundraising process from the founder side, that can take, I've seen that take up to 6 months for some people, and, it takes them out of their business and definitely affects the growth and things like that. So yeah, my goal is definitely to get more people interested in angel investing, present them with the best deals. And, I have some goals around, philanthropy as well that I'm still in the early days and, working on at the moment. I actually worked at UNICEF Australia when I was first out of university in the marketing department. So I definitely have an affinity for, social good and change. And yeah, I'm thinking of different ways that, successful angel investors can contribute towards these type of goals as well.
Awesome, Brendan. So where can we go? I guess there's so many things now you're doing, but is there a good entry point for getting in touch with you?
Yeah, I'm very active on LinkedIn in terms of answering messages. So you can find me at LinkedIn. If you type in Brendan Hill, I'll be the first response. And I'll also drop in a link to my AngelList syndicate in the show notes as well. I'll send that to you, Yarrow.
Awesome.
And any questions that you guys have about, investing, entrepreneurship, e-commerce startups, I'm more than happy to talk to you.
I am curious, just maybe one last question. What with AngelList, since I think Tiliter was your first syndicate there, is the plan to be very regular there? Do you want to be like a Jason Kalkanis doing a deal a week or a deal a month at some point?
Yeah, I mean, there are syndicate leads that, do a deal a week and stuff like that. But I want to make sure that, I'm only syndicating, the cream of the crop, the best, absolute best founders that, A, I know personally, B, they're thinking global from day one. They want to take over the world with their product. So I think I'll be, about one deal a quarter would be my sort of cadence. And just syndicating the best deals that Australia has to offer.
Awesome. Brendan, thanks for sharing both sides of that story, the entrepreneur and the angel investor. I feel like it's perhaps still early days with that angel investing career, but I love that you're also educating and trying to bring more people into it. Me personally, I guess I've been more like 2 years. I'd call myself consistently angel investing, although I had one very, very early one a long time ago. I didn't even realize I was angel investing really when I did that one. And I think it's a great space. So anyone listening in, if you're finding this idea interesting, I think the most important point to make, and I know this was a breakthrough for me, is that to join a syndicate, it's $1,000 to get started in a lot of these deals. Like you can have a very, very small chunk in one of these startups that could turn into a significant return. And maybe not a 4,000x return like Uber with Jason. That is a bit of a one in a billion kind of result. But there's no reason why you can get a good result. There's no guarantees, of course. Most companies do fail. I was going to say that, but I think it's exciting to be involved. And I love seeing the behind the scenes info you get too about these companies. I think as an entrepreneur, being an angel investor is actually really insightful. Gives you an idea of what's kind of working for them. And like you said, what industries are taking off and what business models people are using. So I'm sure Brendan will touch base on new syndicate deals in the future. And keep up the good work.
Yeah, thanks, Yarrow. Thanks for having me.
Hey, this is Yarrow, and thanks for being a listener. Now, in this episode, if there was something you think could benefit a friend, a family member, a colleague, maybe an entrepreneur that you know, maybe it was something to do with getting traffic or launching a product or just coming up with an idea, make sure you send this episode to them. It could change the trajectory of their life, and I'd really appreciate the introduction to my show. Also, if you're not a subscriber, make sure you click that subscribe button, whether it's in Google or Apple or YouTube or Spotify, and you'll get my episodes as I release them. Thanks again for being a listener.
Thanks for listening to Yarrow's podcast. For more episodes, visit yarrow.blog and subscribe on iTunes or Google.